For 9 years, a man terrorized women across the D.C. region, breaking into homes and raping his victims before killing a brilliant young scientist near Georgetown University in 1998.
As these cases went on, the more the victims resisted, the more violent he became.
Then he suddenly stops, leaving police with a lot of clues and one unknown subject. 10 years go by, then 20, and then detectives get the break they need to crack the case wide open. I'm Paul Wagner. Join me for Unknown Subject, Season 3 of WTOP's American Nightmare podcast series, available now on all podcast platforms.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 284 of the True Crime All the Time Unsolved podcast. I'm Mike Ferguson, and with me, as always, is my partner in true crime, Mike Gibson. Gibby, how are you?
I'm doing okay, man. How about you?
I'm doing very well.
Good.
Glad to hear that you're doing well. Morph's doing well.
That's good.
It is good because he had to evacuate, and Hurricane Ian turned out to be, I think, worse than people maybe even thought it was going to be. And so it's affected a lot of people. Feel bad for them. Hope everybody's safe and doing well. Let's go ahead and give our Patreon shout outs. We had Amy Hall.
Hey, Amy.
Cool Ray jumped out at our highest level.
What up, cool?
Because that's how cool Ray is.
Absolutely.
Brenda Martins.
Hey, Brenda.
Jennifer Gorley jumped out higher than our highest level.
That's awesome. Thank you, Jennifer.
Maddie Asper.
Hey, Maddie.
Shannon Cotterman.
What's going on, Cotterman?
Angela DeQuiros.
Thank you, Angela.
Shadesha Wright.
What's going on, Shadesha?
Ron Lassard.
Hey, Ron.
Diamond Beck.
Appreciate that, Beck.
Jason and Jennifer King jumped out at our highest level.
There's the Kings. Thank you.
Glacial Gothic.
Awesome. Glacial.
Carly Sinclair.
Hey, Carly.
Florian Fisher.
Well, thank you, Fisher.
Bridget Donaldson.
What's up, Donaldson?
Rutatia.
Well, nothing wrong with some rotation.
Danielle S.
Hey, Danielle.
Nikki Bouquet.
What's going on, Nikki?
Derek Erb.
Hey, Derek.
Nev.
There's good old Nev.
Jacob Flores jumped out at our highest level.
Man, you're awesome, Jacob.
Tim Peterson.
Hey, Tim.
And last but not least, Carrie Cassiopo.
What's going on, Carrie Cassiopa?
And then if we go back into the vault, this week we selected Michelle Schultz.
Man, thanks, Michelle. Been around a long time.
Yeah, great support on Patreon, new Patreon, the continued support. It's awesome. We had some great PayPal donations from Maria Flagerup.
Hey, Maria.
Robin Taylor.
Awesome, Robin.
Gregory Yankow.
Hey, thank you, Yankow.
And Jude Brogan.
Oh, Brogan.
So thanks to everyone who chooses to support the show. Gibbs, right now on True Crime All the Time, we have part 1 out about professional wrestler Chris Benoit.
Yeah, so good.
It's a case people have been wanting us to do for a very, very long time.
I'm glad we're covering it.
But are you ready to get into this episode of True Crime All the Time Unsolved?
I am ready.
We are talking about the death of Michelle Von Emster. In April 1994, 25-year-old Michelle Von Emster's body was found in the water off the coast of San Diego, California. Based on the severity of her injuries, investigators assumed she was killed by a white shark, but shark experts refused to accept the medical examiner's conclusion. So I mentioned it, Michelle Von Emster was 25 years old when she died. She grew up in San Carlos, California, a city near San Francisco. Michelle graduated from Notre Dame High School. In 1986, she studied at St. Mary's College, but had to pause her studies when she was diagnosed with leukemia. Michelle successfully completed her treatment after surviving cancer. She wanted to travel. In fall of 1992, Michelle lived in Loma Portal. Her home overlooked the San Diego Bay. You ever been to San Diego?
I have been.
Love that place.
Yeah. Been to San Diego and
San Diego.
or as how did Ron what's his name?
San Diego.
San Diego, yeah.
Michelle was considered a drifter, a free spirit. She liked to spend most of her time at the beach, surfing, swimming, or meditating.
That's what I like to do at the beach. Do a little surfing, a little swimming.
Meditating.
Yeah. I know you just probably would stay away from the beach.
You know me and beaches. It's not a great mix.
Yeah.
According to a 2014 San Diego Reader article, Michelle rented rooms in nicer homes that were similar, perhaps, to the one she grew up in, but each subsequent move took her a little further down the hill each time, toward the beach, until she reached her final destination. It was a shared 2-bedroom at 4999 Mirror Avenue in a sleazy Ocean Beach neighborhood known as the War Zone. I guess it was called this because it was known for drugs, mayhem, and cheap rent.
Yeah, I don't know if you can get too excited about that, right? Hey, I'm going to be on the beach, but I'm going to be in the war zone.
But what's the key? The key is the final destination, which is the beach. So
Absolutely.
Whatever you have to do to get there, it sounds like that was her main goal. And we said she was kind of a drifter. She was a free spirit. It was said that she kind of lived off the grid. She didn't own a car. And she would kind of hop from minimum wage job to minimum wage job, really just to make ends meet.
Yeah.
She wasn't trying to get rich. She was just trying to make enough money to do whatever she wanted to do.
And like you said, live off the grid. I mean, there's something to be said about living off the grid.
Yeah, and I don't know if I would call this living off the grid. When I think living off the grid, to me, that is you got no utilities, or, you're using solar and you're pumping your water from a well and you're not paying a bill to some municipality. But maybe for San Diego,
Yeah.
this was living off the grid. In 1994, Michelle applied to work at Cabrillo Stationery and Office Supply, owned by a woman named Denise Cox. Michelle told Denise that she was being stalked at her second job at Rumor's coffee shop. She thought that getting a day job would throw her stalker off her routine. She didn't know the stalker's name, but she did know that he drove a motorcycle.
Well, if you want to throw a stalker off, you definitely want to change up your routine.
Well, we have done a number of cases where stalking has been involved. It's a very, very scary thing. Edwin Decker, a bartender who knew Michelle, told the San Diego Reader, "I first met her at Rumors, or probably around February 1994. The coffee shop was owned by Bill Winston, who also owned Winston's, the bar I worked in. The two buildings were connected, so the back door of Winston's was also the back door of Rumors. I would often go into Rumors through that door and get a coffee before my shift. I was instantly attracted to her. Aside from her beauty, which was soft and warm and wholly feminine, she was intelligent."
He clearly was fascinated by her.
Captivated might even be the right word. Edwin Decker and Michelle Von Emster started off as friends, but it seems like they both had a romantic interest in each other. Edwin had drinks with Michelle on April 13th, 1994. They had been flirting for a few weeks, and he finally convinced her to go out with him. Afterwards, they bought a pack of beer and some cigarettes. They walked to Edwin's apartment and planned to spend the rest of the night drinking. According to the San Diego Reader, Edwin would say years later, on the walk home, a car drove up beside us. It was the bouncer from Winston's, who was still supposed to be working at the bar. He pulled over, nearly in tears, and said that Bill Winston had just fired him. Apparently, just after we left, some guy came in and started some shit. I guess the doorman was unable to handle the situation, and the guy ripped the front door off its hinges. Bill told him, "You're the doorman. At the very least, you have to protect the door." And he sent this guy packing. Anyway, so there he is in his car on the side of the road, this big guy fighting back to tears, and he asks if he could come over with us.
Well, that probably broke up their alone time.
Yeah, that's not ideal if you finally got the date.
Yeah.
With this woman that you've been captivated with for, some time. I also think it's pretty rough. The old Bill says, at the very least, as the doorman, you You should make sure that my door doesn't get ripped off its hinges.
Yeah, slightly rough, right?
So this doorman came back to the apartment with them and drank until he passed out. Edwin and Michelle, they kissed, they fooled around a little bit, but they were interrupted about every 15 minutes, apparently, by this guy waking up. So this is not the date that you're hoping for. Either of them probably was hoping for.
Probably a lot of eye rolling going on.
At 5 a.m. on April 14th, Michelle got a cab and left to go home. This was the last time Edwin saw her. He thought he and Michelle had a strong connection, so he was upset when he didn't hear from her until he found out later that Michelle was dead.
So that would suck, that you think you found the person for you and things are going good, and you even have this little quirky thing going on with this doorman being over, but still you guys like each other, and then you don't hear from her again.
That would be terrible until you then later find out that she is dead.
Yeah.
And then you have a whole different set of feelings to work through. Edwin Decker was initially a person of interest, but the police quickly cleared him. He told the San Diego Reader that he didn't contact the police when he heard the description of the shark attack victim because he assumed they already knew Michelle's identity and were keeping it private until they told her family. He wrote a poem to help him express his feelings, something that we'll talk about later because it's important in the case. But let's shift focus back to Michelle's last day alive. On April 14th, 1994, Michelle was supposed to go to a Pink Floyd concert with her friend and roommate Coco Campbell, but they bought the wrong tickets. Michelle was disappointed. On their way home, she asked Coco to drop her off at the pier, which was just a few blocks from her house. Michelle often went to the pier to go for walks, so Coco dropped her off on Newport Avenue around 8 p.m. This was the last time anyone saw Michelle alive. Coco Campbell told the police that Michelle was in a strange mood and she didn't want to go home. She also reported that Michelle was last seen wearing a green trench coat. Police believe that Michelle most likely got into the water around midnight. The water was very cold, about 59 degrees that night. It was also high tide. There would have been strong waves, and it was overcast, meaning it was very dark.
So not good conditions to go swimming.
No, and the first thing that jumps into my mind is, why would she willingly want to get into this water? I know people do. They like cold water, wakes them up, refreshes them, but it's midnight, 59 degrees in the water, strong waves. It just doesn't seem like something that most people would do.
Yeah, I mean, I know you hate the ocean.
I do.
But even somebody like me that does not hate the ocean, I don't see what the desirability, if that's a good word.
It's not, but keep going.
To want to get in frigid water and in the dark and knowing that, the current's going to be pretty steady, if not strong. I'm just thinking it's not the right time to do that.
But we already said up front, right? Police believe that she was killed by a shark. So it makes sense that their theory has her getting in the water.
Sure.
Because that's got to happen for the shark to be able to attack her. On April 15th, 1994, two surfers, David Correa and William Dostal, saw a flock of seagulls standing in the ocean near some kelp and pecking at something that was floating in the water. They moved closer and found a body. The birds took off, and William saw the body in the water. He paddled back to shore. Correa stayed on the water with the body. At 3:18 p.m., a man named Andrew Todd called the lifeguards to report surfers holding a body on Point Loma. Lifeguards John Little and Tom Thayer left the Ocean Beach Lifeguard Station at 3:19 p.m. Bruce Robinson and Joe Wade left the lifeguard dock in Mission Beach in a rescue boat. And Lieutenant Frank Powell and Chief Brant Bass left from Mission Beach. John Little and Tom Thayer got there at 3:24 p.m. Frank Powell arrived at 3:27. Brant Bass ended up not going to the scene because he was called to another emergency. Little, Powell, and Thayer stood on the cliffs and looked into the water, but they couldn't see anything. They drove up Sunset Cliffs Boulevard and continued searching in the water. Robinson and Wade arrived a few minutes later in their boat and found the body in the water. It would take investigators several days to identify the woman as Michelle Von Emster.
You know, that's one of my fears, is finding a body in the water, because I know from the cases we've done and some of the pictures I've seen of bodies being found in the water,
what happens to a body. Yeah,
exactly.
When it's in the water. I really don't want to find a body anywhere. I'll just go on record as saying that.
Right.
That's not on my want list by any means.
Nowhere in your bucket list.
No. According to the Maritime Herald, Michelle was found face down in the water. Her arms were out in front of her, and her legs were curled up in a strange form of like a question mark. Her eyes were open. She was found naked, except for 2 rings and a brass bracelet. Michelle had a butterfly tattoo on her right shoulder, but only half of it was there. The other half was missing because a large piece of her skin had been ripped off. Michelle's right leg was missing from the thigh down, and pieces of muscle tissue were torn off her body. It was reported that Michelle's pelvis was pulled apart by brute force. She had scrapes and bruises on her face and body. So you mentioned that it would be tough finding a body in water. Based on that description, this would be, even tougher.
For sure.
This is a very gruesome scene to happen upon.
I'm kind of wishing I didn't eat dinner before we recorded this.
Yeah, it was kind of nasty, to be honest with you. By 4 p.m., rescue teams had retrieved Michelle's body and moved her to the San Diego lifeguard headquarters. Medical examiner Robert Engel did his first exam on the deck of the lifeguard headquarters. His initial exam recorded the following. The woman had large tearing type wounds with missing tissue. Most of her right leg was gone. She hadn't been in the water for long. No ID or clothing was found with her body. No cause of death was given at this time. But everyone at the lifeguard station assumed she had been attacked by 1 or more sharks during the night. And I get that. I see how people could make that connection based on what sounds like to be very brutal wounds to the body. Michelle's clothing was found, but her green trench coat and her purse were found separately from her body. Initial reports said that Michelle's purse was found on a bluff, but police records say her purse was found by someone walking on the beach on the night of April 15th. The purse was found about a half mile from her body. The purse contained her driver's license, keys, cigarettes, a pay stub, makeup, a fanny pack, and $27 in cash. So I think one thing that people have brought up, Gibbs, is that if Michelle put her purse on the beach and went swimming at midnight, this means that the purse set out for a full day. No one took it, and it doesn't appear as if anyone stole anything out of it.
And we know she lived in what they called the war zone area. And if this was near her home, it seems a little strange that no one grabbed the purse or went through the purse.
Yeah, I get it. Maybe people don't take a license or makeup, but who's going to, stumble upon a purse and not take the $27 that's in it,
right,
if they're not going to turn it in, right, and do the right thing? If they're going to do something, they're at least going to take the $27. Denise Knox also reported that Michelle's next to last paycheck was never recovered or cashed.
So just missing.
Yeah, we don't know what happened to it. Michelle was found 200 yards off the beach on Point Loma at Sunset Cliffs. The beach area was fairly remote. Only surfers and locals went there. Sunset Cliffs is not usually considered a swimming area, but people do go there to sunbathe in the coves. The Maritime Herald describes Sunset Cliffs as a coastal area with a surface of sandstone with grooves. It's an area unpredictable by the rough sea that rains and the frequent inclement weather. Huge signs often warn tourists to watch the stage from behind the railings and chains on the promenade. So I get it from that. It does not sound like a place that you really want to try to venture into.
Doesn't sound like the ideal location if you want to go swimming.
No, definitely not. On April 16th, San Diego medical examiner Brian Blackburn performed Michelle's autopsy and confirmed that she was attacked by a shark. Blackburn still didn't know who the victim was, though. At this point, all of Michelle's injuries were recorded. Her face was covered in scrapes, contusions, and bruises. Her neck was broken. We mentioned it, right? Her right leg was removed at mid-thigh. Her left leg, arms, and buttocks were severely injured and shredded. She had what was described as busted ribs. Her pelvis was ripped apart. And according to pathologists, Michelle had 6 to 9 inch bite marks on her back and shoulders. So now we have the medical examiner who's performing this autopsy stating, yes, this appears to be the work of sharks.
Yeah.
A large amount of sand was found in her mouth, lungs, throat, and stomach. Michelle drowned after an internal hemorrhage. The autopsy found that she was alive when she was injured and was only in the water for a short period of time. So I think all of this just backed up the investigators' theory that Michelle was killed by a white shark. True Crime All the Time Unsolved is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Let's face it, sometimes multitasking can be overwhelming. Like when your favorite podcast is playing and the person next to you is talking and your car fan is blasting, all while you're trying to find the perfect parking spot. But then again, sometimes multitasking is easy, like quoting with Progressive Insurance. They do the hard work of comparing rates so you can find a great rate that works for you, even if it's not with them. Give their nifty comparison tool a try, and you might just find getting the rate and coverage you deserve is easy. All you need to do is visit Progressive's website to get a quote with all the coverages you want, like comprehensive and collision coverage or personal injury protection. Then you'll see Progressive's direct rate, and their tool will provide options from other companies all lined up and ready to compare, so it's simple to choose the rate and coverages you like. Press play on comparing auto rates, quote at Progressive.com to join the over 27 million drivers who trust Progressive. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Comparison rates not available in all states or situations. Prices vary based on how you buy. Hey TCAT fans, Gibby and I want to tell you about Claire. Claire is an innovative new e-commerce paint startup that takes the hassle out of paint shopping with a streamlined selection of designer curated colors, peel and stick paint swatches, and premium paint and supplies delivered straight to your door. Claire also offers ultra premium paint that's healthier for your home and the environment. And unlike traditional paint brands, which overwhelm you with thousands of colors, Claire focuses on fewer, better colors, expertly curated through an interior designer's lens. And Claire's peel and stick paint swatches are amazing. They're an exact match to the paint color and finish, and you can instantly see what colors work best in your space. Just peel and stick. You can move them around the room, and they're non-damaging to your walls. With Claire, you can find everything you need to choose a paint color and tackle your paint project with confidence without leaving your home, from the products to inspiration, tips, and tutorials. It's literally a one-stop shop. So for your next paint project, definitely give Claire a try. Go to claire.com/TCAT for 10% off your order. That's claire.com/TCATT for 10% off. On the evening of April 16th, Denise Knox, Michelle's boss at Cabrillo Stationery and Office Supply, was watching the news. They reported the death of an unidentified woman with a butterfly tattoo on her shoulder. Denise and her husband suspected that it was Michelle because she hadn't shown up for work on the 15th or the 16th. So Denise called the medical examiner's office and spoke with the coroner for about a half an hour. She gave Michelle's description, but he didn't seem to believe her because apparently they'd gotten a bunch of false calls already. Denise mentioned that Michelle didn't shave her underarms or legs, and that's when the coroner asked her to come to the office. Denise and her shop manager drove to the morgue. They got there in the early hours of April 17th.
So the unshaven arms and legs is what
must have convinced the medical examiner that I think this woman knows what she's talking about. Denise didn't want to identify the body in person. So the medical examiner took a picture of the woman's face and showed her. And she identified the woman as Michelle Von Emster. You see that a lot on TV where somebody's called in, they have to go in and they pull back the sheet to identify the body. All right, not everybody's going to want to do that.
No, that's going to be pretty tough to do.
Even if you're not related.
Yeah.
You know this person, you've worked with this person for some period of time. Coroner's officials released Michelle's information on April 18th, 1994. A spokeswoman for the medical examiner's office said Michelle had not been in the water long when she was attacked. The medical examiner had created a timeline of Michelle's final hours. Michelle was last seen alive at 8 p.m. on April 14th. It's thought that she went swimming alone around midnight when she was attacked by a white shark. During the attack, Michelle went to the bottom of the ocean. Her neck was broken and she ingested a large amount of sand. After Michelle died, it's believed that a group of smaller blue sharks attacked her remains. Okay, real gruesome stuff, though.
Yeah.
Now, initially, some shark experts agreed that Michelle was attacked by a white shark. And police specifically said Michelle was attacked by a white shark, not a great white, because they thought it was probably smaller than 12 feet. I didn't know that was the cutoff.
I didn't know either, but even a 12-foot shark has me nervous.
But any shark, baby sharks, have me nervous. They might clip a toe or something.
Yeah.
Shark's teeth just scare me in general. Michelle's death was the first shark fatality in San Diego County since 1959, and the first shark fatality on the Pacific coast since 1989. So apparently it doesn't happen all that frequently.
It's good. It's a rarity, but still, when you hear about them.
Well, it's like watching the movie Jaws.
Yeah.
When that movie came out in the 70s, nobody wanted to go to the beach.
No.
Because that was scary.
It's just like you never know what's lurking underneath you and around you when you're in water like that.
Because you can't see.
Exactly.
Anytime you can't see what's going on around you, underneath you, I'm out.
Yeah.
I got to have my head on a swivel. I got to have a visual of what could attack me. In the ocean, you don't get that.
No.
And I don't like it.
They tell you all these dangerous creatures are there, but you can't see them. It's not like you're swimming in a pond or a lake where you know what's in there.
Well, you can't see them, but they're not going to kill you. Well, unless you're down south, you can get alligators maybe.
Well, it's a little bit different.
Where we are, there ain't nothing going to kill you in these ponds around here. In February 1989, UCLA grad student Tamara McAllister was killed by a great white shark in Malibu. She was out kayaking with her boyfriend that day. His body was never found. According to the Times Advocate, Denise Knox told the press, "What happened is really a shame because she had a lot of tough going in her life. What she told us was that she had been in remission the past 2 years from leukemia and that she had undergone really horrendous treatment." According to neighbor Betty Stafford, Michelle liked to swim and surf every day. She also had a cat, which her neighbor adopted after she died. So I do think that is important information. She did like to swim.
Yeah.
Every day. So is it a far reach for the police to believe that she entered the water, took off her clothes, went for a night dip in the ocean, and a shark got her?
Yeah, I think it sounds very believable.
It's plausible, right?
Yeah.
Based on all the information.
Knowing how much she loved the water, that she was very used to swimming in that area.
Lieutenant Charlie Wright from the San Diego City Lifeguard Division told the San Diego Associated Press, "I would say this is more than rare based on the geographic area we cover and the number of beach patrons that come to the beach. This is absolutely unheard of. It's rarer than rare." You think there's more shark attacks on the East Coast? Because I feel like I hear about them all the time.
Yeah, I do think there's more on the East Coast, on the, around the Carolinas and down
through Florida.
Yeah, northern Florida. Yeah,
hear about them all the time.
Yeah.
On April 21st, the press announced that homicide detectives were assigned to Michelle's case after the San Diego police received anonymous tips that Michelle's death was a result of foul play. The people who called in the tip said that Michelle wouldn't swim alone, and she definitely wouldn't swim naked. They also expressed concern about the location of Michelle's purse and her missing clothing. Another tipster said the shark attack could be a cover-up for murder. Okay, police have more information. They're going to act on that information. Good thing.
Well, for sure. And it's something that could, again, be plausible. What could be a better cover-up than making it look like sharks did it?
Yeah, it's very similar to, cases we talk about in, let's say, the southeastern part of the U.S. where they do have a lot of gators. And people for many, many years have used those gators to get rid of bodies. Homicide detectives spoke with the medical examiner's office and looked at photos of Michelle's body. They didn't find any knife or gunshot wounds. They spoke with Michelle's roommate, Coco Campbell. She told them that it was normal for Michelle to go to the beach alone or swim alone in the ocean.
So it's kind of countering what the caller suggested, that she would never go swimming by herself.
Yeah, and I think if you're weighing the two, kind of got to go with the roommate, right?
Yeah.
As being the person that would know her better and know her habits better. According to the Times Advocate, Lieutenant Jim Collins told the press, people can't believe it's just a shark attack. People don't understand. They don't know the facts. On April 24th, 1994, homicide detectives officially closed the investigation and concluded that Michelle died of accidental drowning after a shark attack. After Michelle's autopsy, people started to question if she really was attacked by sharks. Ralph Collier, founder of the Shark Research Committee and author of a book on shark attacks, was one of the first people to dispute this theory. He had initially agreed, though, that Michelle was attacked by a shark. He gave this statement before he saw the remains of Michelle's femur. He spoke with Brian Blackburn in April 1994 about Michelle's autopsy. The autopsy was finished, so he couldn't examine all of her body, but he did look at the femur, which Blackburn had saved. This caused him to have doubts about the initial shark attack determination. According to the San Diego Reader, Collier was also concerned because sand was found in Michelle's mouth, throat, nasal passages, lungs, and stomach, which means the shark would have had to grab her and push her by her face into the ocean floor. And she would have had to still have been alive for the sand to have gotten into her lungs. According to Collier, if Michelle was attacked by a shark, she would have bled to death very quickly, because if the shark actually bit her leg off, it would have severed the femoral artery. He said, but for her to have sand in her stomach, she had to take a big gulping breath as she made contact with sand. After I reviewed the data, that's all I could come up with.
So here's an expert in sharks,
making what seems to be some pretty good points.
Yeah.
The leg thing is something that was probably the first to jump out at me.
Yeah.
Just because, when you deal in true crime or just watch movies, you understand very quickly how devastating it is to have that femoral artery severed.
Yeah.
I mean, people bleed out very quickly just from a slash. Now imagine that the whole leg is severed. I don't really want to imagine it, but the blood loss would be, I would think, very, very quick.
So if that's the case, then how would she be able to inhale all this sand? And
would she still be alive by the time that the shark took her down,
right?
To the ocean floor? And like the one person said, it would have to be kind of that perfect storm of pushing her face down. There were also no white shark tooth impressions among the bite marks on Michelle's body. White sharks leave impressions behind when they bite someone. Their teeth look different than the smaller blue sharks that bit Michelle's body. Collier believed that Michelle didn't die from a great white attack, but smaller sharks did feed on her body after she was already dead.
Well, that gives me the chills.
Yeah, even in death, it's not something that you would want to have happen to your body.
No.
Brian Blackburn admitted that he had never seen a shark fatality, and neither had anyone else who investigated Michelle's death. So what he did was he reached out to the Scripps Institute of Oceanography for their opinion Richard Rosenblatt was chairman of the graduate department and a professor at Scripps Institute. He thought it was a very peculiar case from the beginning. He never saw Michelle's body. Rosenblatt asked Blackburn and a forensic dentist to come to Scripps. He told them that if Michelle's leg was bitten off, only a white shark could have done it. He made a display of different shark jaws to prove his theory. And in 2014, Rosenblatt explained to the San Diego Reader that white sharks don't hunt at night because they have light-activated retinas. They see silhouettes in daylight.
So again, we got somebody kind of contradicting the fact that this was a shark attack.
And he also said that in his opinion, the other wounds couldn't have been caused by a white shark. They could have come from the blue sharks, but blue sharks usually hunt in deeper water. And Michelle was found in only about 10 feet of water. So yeah, I mean, I think you have these shark experts who are kind of saying, I'm not seeing it. It's a good initial theory. It sounds good, but me as the expert, I'm telling you, I don't think it happened this way.
Yeah, this stuff's not adding up.
No, all the different things aren't adding up together. We mentioned that Michelle's neck was broken and she was covered in bruises on her face, arms, and her ribs were broken and her pelvis was torn forcibly. These injuries, it's been said, are not consistent with shark attacks. And finally, you have to talk about the temperature of the water. Very cold. I said it. You said it. A lot of people have said it. Doesn't it make it seem unlikely that Michelle would have wanted to go swimming? Yeah, I know the Polar Bear Club does it.
Right.
But this is a woman alone at around midnight, dark, cold. Not saying it couldn't happen. It just seems unlikely.
Yeah, I'm just thinking if you're going to go in, maybe you're going in real quick, just like that rush and coming right back out. Because it's going to be cold, right?
You're swimming laps, are you?
No.
So shark experts spent weeks analyzing the case. Institutions like the Shark Research Committee and the International Shark Attack File refused to list Michelle as a shark attack fatality. So I think it's telling you something when you have not one, not two, but a number of different groups of shark experts who are saying, we're not seeing it.
Yeah. We can't get behind this.
No, because the data and our experience won't let us. The Maritime Herald wrote, the state of Von Emster's official death went from being a statistic to a kind of morbid limbo in which any kind of speculation was valid.
I get it. That's frustrating too, right?
I think it would be frustrating to everyone involved. It's frustrating for the police because they thought they kind of knew what happened. And then you have all these shark experts who are contradicting them. Frustrating for the shark experts because I don't think they want shark fatalities listed when they believe they're not, right? Because that gives sharks a bad name. They're shark people. And then finally, very frustrating to any family, friends, coworkers, because you kind of think you know what happened. Okay, it was a bad accident and she died. It's terrible. It's a tragedy, but we know what happened and we're moving on. Now what you have is we don't really know what happened. And possibly this could have been something a lot more sinister. So everybody is kind of in limbo. So let's talk about some theories that have been put forth about how Michelle may have died. She could have gone swimming that night and gotten caught by a wave or a riptide, maybe hit some rocks. And then she was bitten by some blue sharks after she died. But again, you have to factor in that she would have had to make the decision that, yes, I'm going into this 59-degree water at midnight in a very dark with no moonlight.
Unlike you, I like the beach, but I wouldn't even think about getting in the cold water with the water being rough at nighttime like that. You know,
I think if you polled most people, they would say, no, I wouldn't do that. Now, Michelle was a free spirit.
Sure.
So maybe she didn't think the same as most people. Maybe she thought, I'm free. I want to do whatever I want to do.
Yeah.
I don't care that it's midnight. I don't care that it's 59 degrees. Another theory is that Michelle fell off a cliff. Sunset Cliffs is known for having some areas with deteriorated sandstone, and some people have fallen off the cliffs before. Her injuries could be explained by her falling or being pushed. Well, at least some of her injuries.
Yeah, because you still have to figure out what happened to her leg.
Yeah, and I think that her leg is the key, right? Because you can explain the bruises and the broken ribs and all that a number of different ways. Okay, if you fall off a cliff, you're going to sustain contusions, broken bones. All of that is going to happen.
Right.
If that fall killed you, broke your neck, and then you fell into the water, could some blue sharks come along and start to eat you? I know it's morbid, but
yeah,
yes. But these shark experts are saying that these blue sharks could not completely sever her leg in the way that it was done.
Right. It would take a white shark.
And they're saying the bite was not consistent
right.
with the white shark. So there's a lot to kind of take into consideration here. And then a third theory is that Michelle was murdered and someone either left her in the ocean or drowned her. Remember, one expert stated that Michelle would have had to swallow a lot to ingest the amount of sand that was found in her stomach, which could be explained by someone forcibly holding her down and drowning her. And that could be done in very shallow water. We know that.
For sure. It doesn't take a lot of water to drown.
This could also explain why she was found naked. Because when you think about it, yeah, a shark could bite through, tear off some clothing, damage clothing. And that could happen during a fall, hitting the rocks, jagged rocks, tear, rip off clothing. But does that explain how all of her clothing was removed and not found anywhere near her body?
Yeah, I think it's a good argument, right? Because sure, maybe a piece could come off, but
I think if they hadn't found her clothes, well, then you could make the argument that maybe a frenzied shark attack just took all of her clothing off somehow. But when you find the clothes, to me, that means she either took them off herself and walked into that water,
yeah,
or someone made her take them off, took them off her, and then did something bad to her.
Right. And then somebody left her in the water.
Assuming that sharks or whatever would come get her. Or, maybe if somebody did hurt her, kill her, they didn't know what happens when you dump a body in water.
Right.
And they just assumed that the body would sink.
Or wash out to the...
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not everybody knows everything, especially in the 1990s. Yeah, there were shows, but the information, the forensic type stuff was not as prolific as it is today. I feel like today, everybody's like 2 inches away from being an expert forensic person because it's everywhere.
Sure is.
Every CSI, every true crime doc, every podcast, you're just getting bombarded with forensic type information. Not saying we're experts, but our listeners probably are.
It's good. Knowledge is good.
Knowledge is good unless you use it to help you commit crimes.
Yeah, then it's bad.
And I think the one thing that we can't forget about is that we did say, right, Michelle lived in a dangerous area. This was an area with a very high crime rate. She also complained that a man was stalking her shortly before she died, but this man has never been identified. In 2014, Denise Knox told the San Diego Reader that a man from Ocean Beach obtained a copy of Michelle's autopsy report. He came to Cabrillo Stationery repeatedly to have copies made. Denise said she even kept one of the copies for herself. She told the San Diego Reader that this man rode a motorcycle.
Okay, that's a little freaky, spooky.
It is. I mean, obviously a lot of people ride motorcycles, but the fact that Michelle said that her stalker rode a motorcycle, this guy's in making copies of her autopsy in the place that she worked.
It's almost like he's rubbing their noses in it.
Almost.
Yeah.
If this was the person who hurt her, killed her, then yeah. One of the unofficial persons of interest was Michelle's friend, Edwin Decker. We talked about Edwin. He went on the date with Michelle before she died. The police also found a strange poem that he wrote after her death. He wrote, "The report said there was a tattoo, a butterfly on her shoulder, which I remembered that night on my couch when I, like the shark, chewed on her lips and took off her shirt."
It's a little bizarre.
That's creepy as all get out, man. I get it. This guy was infatuated with her. And I'm sure if he had nothing to do with it, her death was devastating. But that's a creepy poem, man. You got to admit that.
It's very creepy. Why would he even want to write something like that?
Why would it even enter your mind?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't get that. Decker was one of the people who reported that Michelle liked to swim naked. But we already said he was cleared, right? Police looked into him. They found no evidence connecting him to Michelle's death. He was also one of the people who pushed for her case to be reexamined. So now you can take that a couple of different ways. Normally I take it as if I'm responsible, I'm not hammering the police to reopen or reexamine a case.
No way. Yeah.
But you could make the argument that that would make someone like me think you didn't do anything.
That's true too.
A little reverse psychology or whatever you call it.
Why would he be asking that if he had nothing to do with it?
Why don't you just tell me what movie you want to see? Other theories include that Michelle was attacked on the beach by a random assailant. Someone hit her with their car, accidentally maybe, and dumped her body. Someone driving a boat hit her while she was out swimming, and that Michelle took her own life.
Yeah, I mean, you could run down a gamut of reasons.
Oh, we just listed a few. I mean, yeah, we could keep going on things that could have happened.
Yeah.
But here's the trouble I have with all of these. Aside from really a boat hitting her, what's taking off her leg? I guess if you got hit by a car, you'd have to be pinned. I don't know how it would happen.
Right.
I've heard of people on motorcycles who get hit by a car, but that's because their leg is pinned up against the motorcycle and it gets cut off. That's the part to me that, you know, if all these shark experts are saying it wasn't a shark, well, somebody's going to have to explain to me how that leg was severed.
Yeah.
Now, a boat propeller could possibly do it. Michelle's family has said that her taking her own life is extremely unlikely because after surviving cancer, she appreciated life. She wanted to make the most of it, which is the exact reason why she moved to San Diego. And that's one of the things that I thought early on as we were going through her life. You know, she beat cancer, survived it at a very early age. Really, think about it. She was in her, early 20s or whatever.
Yeah.
And it does seem as though after that, she looked at it as though she had this second chance. She was going to be carefree. She was going to do what she wanted to do.
Yeah, she was going to run her own schedule, do what she wanted to do. And by all accounts, it seems like that's what she was doing.
Yeah. Now, does that mean somebody couldn't fall into depression and have bad thoughts? No, it could happen to anyone, but I see why her family is saying that. In April 2008, 66-year-old Dave Martin was killed by a great white shark near Solana Beach. No one saw the shark, but the injuries to his legs indicated that he was attacked by a great white shark. This brought up the conversation of two different cases. A missing man named Robert Pamperin from 1959 and Michelle Von Emster. Reporters noted that experts no longer considered Michelle a shark fatality, and her name had been removed from those registries.
I'm just putting a lot of weight behind what these shark experts have said about Michelle.
Well, because they're experts, right? This is what they do. So, you know, if they look at the bite marks, they can compare it to other bite marks and they know this is not a white. It's not a great white. It's not even a white. So I'm with you. I mean, that is really carrying a lot of weight. It's almost like some big high profile forensic person getting up on the stand and, going through some DNA that is saying 1 in 57 trillion, it's this person. It's that type of stuff to me. Edwin Decker wrote in a blog post, not every news outlet cited the same statistic. In fact, some of the reports listed Dr. Martin's death as only the second shark fatality in the area, such as ABC News, which reported that the last fatal shark attack in Southern California was in 1959. And Surfline.com reported the same thing. Even the Union Tribune reported back in April the only fatal shark attack in San Diego County listed by the International Shark Attack File is the 1959 death of Robert Pamperin at Alligator Head in La Jolla. On July 7th, 2008, Edwin Decker spoke with Ralph Collier, who told him Michelle Von Emster was unequivocally not killed by a shark.
Well, we know Ralph was an expert, so.
Well, and again, let's go back to Edwin Decker. I think, he was a suspect there for a brief time. He was ruled out. He wants them to re-examine the case. Now he's writing blog posts that kind of back up this, hey, she was not killed by a shark.
Right. So what are we doing about it?
Well, I mean, for me, it's if he had something to do with her death, why would he want to do that?
Well, I don't think he would.
It just adds more credence to the fact that he most likely was not involved in any way.
Right. This is somebody he cared about, and he wants to find out what really happened.
Yeah, what happened to her. Writer Neil Matthews reached out to Edwin Decker. Matthews wrote Who Killed Michelle Von Emster for Boating Magazine in 1994. In June 2009, Matthews and Decker wrote a letter to coroner Glenn Wagner, asking him to reopen Michelle's case. Wagner replied 2 days later, agreeing with Brian Blackburn's determination, but also noting that some of Michelle's injuries, like the broken neck, ribs, and pelvis, were atypical of shark injuries. He also said that they could not explain why Michelle was found naked and separate from her belongings. Wagner ended his letter with, any case can and will be reopened if additional validated information surfaces. So this is a pretty interesting reply from this coroner, Glenn Wagner. He's not disagreeing with Brian Blackburn's determination.
Right.
But he is saying things are atypical. This doesn't make sense. We can't figure out this.
Right.
Brian Blackburn died in October 2012. In 2014, Dave Good wrote The Death of Michelle Von Emster off Sunset Cliffs is a drift in mystery for the San Diego Reader. Good spoke with several important people connected to the case. According to allthat'sinteresting.com, Ralph Collier spoke about his opinion on Michelle's injuries. He said, one of the things that struck me was the condition of the limb. When a white shark bites off part of a limb, the break is clean, almost like you put it on a table saw. What remained of Michelle's femur was anything but. It looked like what happens when you get a piece of bamboo and whittle it down to a point with a knife. The bone came to a point. This type of injury is caused when a bone is twisted under a great deal of force. Again, a little macabre, a little disturbing.
Right.
But it's important because here you have this expert who's giving his opinion. Now, could you make the argument that a couple of sharks got a hold of Michelle's body and twisted it so hard that it caused the femur to look like that?
I think you could
maybe
suggest that, right?
You could suggest it. I don't know enough about sharks to say if that's possible or not. I'm just throwing it out there.
Just don't know if they got in some type of tug of war with the body and made that happen.
But what Collier believes is that something like a boat propeller could have caused Michelle's injury, but not a shark. He said, I've looked at close to 100 photos of cases that I've reviewed over the years, and I've never seen any bones that came to a point.
I mean, from his perspective, with his expertise, I get that. I also can say that you just never know. We've seen things that can happen.
Defy.
Yes.
Yeah. That's the thing. You don't know because nobody was there. I get it. He's looked at hundreds of photos of different cases, but maybe it's that 150th or it's the 200th that you've never seen before. Dave Good from the San Diego Reader spoke with Harry Bonnell, listed as a witness to Michelle's autopsy. But he told Good that he didn't witness the autopsy and explained that it was Blackburn's custom to list witnesses. He was covering himself. It's a policy in the case of homicides.
It seems a little strange.
It does seem strange. Why would you put down that there was a witness if nobody was there? They reviewed Michelle's death report, autopsy, and Bonnell made several important statements. He said, there is no evidence in the autopsy report that says the shark attack was ante-mortem, meaning before death. There was a neck injury received while she was alive that could have incapacitated her. There is good evidence that she drowned and that she was alive when she went out into the water. He said of the sand in Michelle's lungs, she inhaled it. It didn't get there passively. The sand was in the bronchi. I don't know if that's bronchi or bronchi.
Bronchi.
I'm going with bronchi.
Yeah.
My first instinct. To get there, he said, it had to have been inhaled. So he's backing that part up. He also said that sand is never found in the lungs of drowning victims because they are not at the bottom inhaling sand. They are at the top thrashing about. And this goes back to, part of the theory of the shark attack, which is that a shark or sharks would have had to have taken Michelle to the very bottom, face first, in order for her to inhale that sand. Next, he said the fracture with hemorrhaging. This is not what you would expect in the case of a shark bite. This is not common in shark attacks where a body gets shaken hard to the point of a whiplash. This is something you'd see in an attack by a land animal.
Yeah, like a bear. That's how I felt when I was almost attacked.
Being shaken by that bear.
Yeah, then I had to jump off the cliff, and
I knew that was a rough day for you.
It was.
Now, he did say it was possible, but not probable, that Michelle died in the manner suggested by her autopsy. And I actually like the fact that he's saying it that way. I think you and I talk a lot about that.
Right.
For me, it's hard to say that certain things are impossible.
Right. Exactly.
But when you talk in degrees of how possible or how plausible or how probable, I feel like you're more credible.
Yeah.
As opposed to saying, I know it happened this way and there's no other way it could have happened.
Right.
This guy's not saying that. He's saying, could it have happened? Sure. But is it likely? No. Michelle Von Emster's case is closed. Her case file was destroyed 7 years after she died. Today, there is only a fact sheet remaining. The authorities maintain that Michelle died of a shark attack. And I'm assuming that's why her case file was destroyed, right? Because this was not listed as a homicide. Right. They probably have a procedure. You have to keep it for so many years and then it's able to be destroyed. As we've talked about, some experts agree that it is possible, but unlikely, that Michelle was killed by a white shark. So if she was not, then it opens up all kinds of possibilities, some of which we talked about, but it definitely presents the big question, which is, how exactly did she die that night?
Yeah.
And 28 years later, her death remains mostly a mystery. It's a fascinating mystery.
It is.
It's tragic, as are all the unsolved cases that we do. But this is a very fascinating case to me because, we started laying out some possible theories. One of the experts, I think, picked one of the theories, which was she may have been killed by a boat propeller or something like that. Obviously, she was attacked by sharks. At what point is the question?
Yeah.
And what type of sharks? Shark experts are saying, sure, she was attacked by sharks, but they were blue sharks and she was already dead.
Right.
At that point. I don't think anybody is disputing that part. What's in dispute is that she was killed by a white shark, which bit completely through her leg, severed it, and that she somehow also drowned while inhaling all of this sand. That's the mystery. That's the part that I think a lot of people are struggling to get around.
You could say, sure, maybe she went up to one of these cliffs, she jumped off or dove off upon impact because hit the water the wrong way, broke her neck,
landed face down
in the water, sucked in that sand and water, floated eventually to the top, maybe through the dark night. A boat was out, came along, didn't see her, somehow got her leg.
And then the sharks.
Came along. But there's so many possibilities and things that you could try to come up with.
There are. But to me, that's what makes a fascinating case. Because it's really not this or that. There's all kinds of different avenues you could go down. You know, the one that you laid out, to me, is very plausible.
Yeah.
You know, is incapacitated due to a fall, falls in a very small amount of water, but can't get up, can't do anything.
Right.
Is inhaling sand, drowns, and then eventually that body washes out. The sharks, attack her. But then you have to have something that completely severs that leg.
Yeah.
And if it's not a white shark, the only other thing that really makes sense is a boat propeller.
Right.
And even that it's plausible, but then you have to say, okay, it only touched the one leg.
Exactly.
And it didn't, get anything else. It would have to be at just the right angle. And it's a very tough case.
Yeah.
But that's it for our episode on the death of Michelle Von Emster. We got some voicemails, Gibbs. You want to check those out?
Let's hear them.
Hey, Mike and Gibby. It's Aaron again out of Sacktown. I was just reviewing some of the old episodes again, and I know you guys covered the Alaska axe murders, and I'm still a little fuzzy. I went through all the episode archives, and I think that's the only one that you guys have done relating to the axe murders. But there's another strange series around the same time, the New Orleans Axeman, and that was all in the same time where all those things were happening in the early 1900s, I think. So it's just fascinating. All that time, all those crimes were being committed, how easy access those killers had, and how the axes were all either property of the owners or the killer brought that with him to the site. Today, it's just kind of a different story, security and all that. And even having a dog is a big deal just to help protect our families. So just a big contrast in times. But anyways, as always, thanks guys for all that you do, and keep your own time ticking. See you later. Bye-bye.
Yeah, appreciate it. It's a big case. We just haven't done it yet.
Yeah.
Well, we did do the Hinterkaifeck.
We did.
Which had a similar kind of axe situation.
Right. Now look at us. We're all throwing axes while we're drinking at these places where you can throw axes.
Is that a thing now at bars?
Yeah.
Axe throwing?
Axe throwing.
I haven't been to a bar in many, many years.
Yeah.
So
probably good.
It's probably a good thing for me.
Hey, Mike and Gibby. Joe calling from South Carolina. So I don't know if you two have watched the Netflix series about the Dahmer cases and all that stuff. But during the show, they had a character in there named Dean Vaughn. And I remember, I was like, well, I don't remember him being a victim of Dahmer himself. I did some looking into it, and apparently it's a cold case. He was found dead in his apartment, the same apartment that Dahmer lived in. People were saying maybe he did do it, but apparently he didn't. It's a cold case. So maybe if there are something to look into, maybe some facts about his cold case, it could probably be covered on True Crime All the Time Unsolved. If y'all could do it, I really appreciate it, because I would like to know more about it. Thanks for everything you guys do. Appreciate it. Keep up the good work. Keep your own time ticking.
Yeah, appreciate the suggestion. It would be timely because I just read an article today that Dahmer, I think, smashed the record for views on Netflix or something within a certain period of time.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And you said we talked about it on Patreon. You said you watched it. You liked it.
Oh, I did.
But I haven't seen it yet. And I have a history of not watching things right when everybody else is watching them, especially when they're not documentaries. I like documentaries more than I like the actor kind of driven movies about the serial killers. But I'm going to have to watch it because people are talking about it. People seem to like it.
This actor's really good. But I, like you, also like documentaries.
I know you. Well, you actually like documentaries.
Yeah, they're really good.
That's a whole subsection on Netflix.
Yeah.
That you really got to look hard.
I pay extra for that
to find that subsection.
Yeah.
But we should look into that case. You know, if there's enough out there, on it, and that's the problem that we run into a lot of times. But we only had 2 voicemails. I had a third, but it didn't come through very well.
Yeah, I can barely hear it.
Couldn't hear it for some reason. So that's it for True Crime All the Time Unsolved. So for Mike
and Gibby,
stay safe and keep your own time ticking.
This month, celebrate Hispanic Heritage Month with Pluto TV. Watch movies with the biggest stars like Eugenio Derbez in No Eres Tú, Soy Yo, and Luis Gerardo Méndez in Camino a Marte. Plus, Pluto TV has thousands more movies and TV shows and over 45 channels in Spanish, all for free. So download the Pluto TV app on all your favorite devices and start streaming today. Pluto TV. Drop in, watch free.